Okay. Well, welcome everybody to, what is this, our second presentation of the referendum. I appreciate you taking time. We have about half hour, 45 minutes to do the presentation. You can ask some questions. We have, if you've seen our last one and this one, we have a little bit of an addition to it that hopefully will help you guys start thinking about what we're doing and how we got here. If you don't know, Random Lake, we're really about building strong classrooms, strong culture, and strong community connections. I think we've been doing a fantastic job in each one of these areas. And this referendum is really a reflection of the things we're trying to do. Kim, if you want to go to the next, we created a video here that has an overview. So what I want you to do is sit back, it's 4 minutes long. And from that, we're going to dive deeper. We have the experts in the different areas that will talk about what does that 4-minute video mean a little bit deeper, but this will give you some ability to think a little bit about what we're trying to do. So enjoy the video. Hopefully. We have volume. Yeah, why don't you bring it back?
The Random Lake School District is encouraging residents to head to the polls on November 8th to cast an informed vote on our referendum question. We have taken input from the community and various infrastructure and facility studies to create this proposal. In fact, 61% of respondents said they supported our referendum to fund the work that is needed. In short, the referendum is for $29.9 million for building and facility projects to address safety and security, infrastructure, and academics.
We will highlight the specifics in a moment, but first let's look at the tax impact and how schools are funded. Public schools have three main sources of funding: federal, state, and local taxes. Federal funding makes up a small portion of a school district's overall revenue. State equalization aid, money allocated to school districts from the state of Wisconsin, and local property taxes are the two primary sources of funding for schools. In the state revenue limit formula, state aid and property taxes combine to equal the revenue limit, which is the funding a school district has for 1 year. As we look at the chart, we see that if approved, the school district portion of your tax bill is projected to be unchanged. The current mill rate of $9.24 is projected to stay the same.
So, what does this mean on your tax bill? The school district's portion of your tax bill is determined by multiplying the district's mill rate by $1,000 of fair market value. For example, in 2021, the district's mill rate was $9.24. A home that has a fair market value of $100,000 would mean the portion of the tax bill for the district would be $924.
So why can't the district use funds from its operating budget for these projects? Although the school district budgets for facility upgrades and maintenance in the annual operating budget, it cannot support these large-scale projects. A referendum is a resource the state allows districts to utilize in their communities to increase the operating budget.
The approval of the referendum for safety and security projects include car and bus traffic student drop-off and pickup area reconfiguration, main entrance security and visitor monitoring enhancements, fire alarm system, and internal emergency communication system updates.
Infrastructure projects will address interior layout and service capacity, plumbing, heating, and electrical system replacements, restroom updates to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act regulations, roofing, windows, doors, and masonry repair or replacement, technology infrastructure updates to continue to meet the needs of modern curriculum, asphalt, concrete, and storm drainage system replacement.
Academic upgrades include K-12 classroom configurations to support flexible, collaborative, and hands-on learning, classroom updates like flooring, ceilings, furniture, and technology, labs and equipment advancements for science, technology, engineering, and math courses, band and choir area improvements, theater stage and support area updates, fitness area and weight room expansion, locker rooms and support space modernization.
If the referendum is successful, we will be able to support community groups and events for all ages with increased space, flexibility, and access for a variety of activities. For more information, please visit our website, rladvantage.org/referendum.
Okay, so you just got the Cliff Notes version of what you're gonna see for the next 45 minutes and, probably half hour. But wanted to give you this overview, because sometimes seeing it in a video, it helps you kind of connect the things we're doing. But if you want to go to the next slide, Kim. Before we get going on what we want to do, hit the right arrow, probably go to the next slide. There we go. You can go to the next one. So this process isn't something we just started on. Actually, back in 2019, we knew we would get to a place in our budget where we could look at going to a referendum with little or no tax impact. And at that time, we started looking for architects and individuals to help us. And through that process, we identified Bray and Associates to help us. We purposefully in this are only going through architects. Sometimes districts go and do architects and construction managers. We really want this to be competitive and have worked with Matt here for over 2 years here, just trying to go from there. Once we identified our architects, the next thing we needed to know is what do our facilities look like and how do they compare to others? And through that process, we were able to highlight a lot of things that you're going to see in our referendum plan and direct real connect to the things we need or the things that we're looking at doing from there. From there, we reported back to the board. The board took some time, and this summer, as a team, we went forward with doing a referendum question. In that process, we did a survey, and our first survey was for right around 34 million. From that survey, using school perceptions, we found out that it would be about a 50-50 chance. People supported, some didn't support. So what we did is we sharpened our pencil a little bit more, came back with things that we knew people would support and would have no impact, where the first survey had talked about a small impact to it. So that's what got us here today. And I'm gonna let Matt talk a little bit about the facilities, his experience. I can tell you, we looked at a lot of different architects. Bray and his team have done some of the best schoolwork around in the state, in the Midwest, and I feel really lucky to have him on our team. So Matt, you want to talk a little bit about our facility? Yeah.
Well, good to be here again. I'm Matt Wolpert with Bray Architects. As I told the last group, I was actually fortunate. I'm kind of coming home. I grew up in Hingham, of all places. And so I can prove that by saying if you go to Greg's Tap, you only order one order of fries for the whole group. That's how you know I'm from the area. So as Mike said, we began with a facility assessment process. There was no preconceived outcome. We brought our architectural team through, brought civil engineers, plumbing, HVAC, electrical engineers through the building. They looked at all the building systems. We looked at Americans with Disabilities Act and a variety of other things. that process resulted in a facility condition assessment report. So that was a foundational piece of the process that we went through, and resulted in these three general areas of need that we're talking about today. And you heard from the video, the safety, security, infrastructure, and academics. It's really important to note that especially with the safety and security and infrastructure, mainly infrastructure, these are not born out of neglect. It's not as though the school district has not taken care of things or maintained them. They're generally age-based. You can only, in our lovely climate, make asphalt last so long before it eventually moves and cracks, and you can patch it and you can do a lot of things, but eventually you need a more major replacement project. That's one example of the district doing the best they can, but it's at the point where it really does need a larger investment. We can go ahead, please. So as was noted in the video, there's a variety of improvements from the safety and security perspective. So the first is parent bus drop-off pickup. So if the community approves, there'll be a reconfiguration of the front drop-off and pickup sequence to separate the buses and the parents, and really at the same time also address some of the aging asphalt that we have. Right now, if you know the main entrance, there's a variety of entrances to come into school. The project would consolidate to one location where all visitors would come after the school day starts. So as soon as the school day begins, the perimeter would be secured, all the doors would be locked, and there'll be one point of entry into the school. And that location with much better visibility of visitors approaching. The fire alarm system doesn't currently meet code, and then right now our communication system, intercom, PA, whatever you want to call it, really it's also just old. It was part of some of the original construction, and it's been piecemeal, but it really is hard. And that may not seem like a big deal, but obviously in case of an emergency or lockdown, it really is critical that they have the ability to communicate across the entire building during those challenges. Infrastructure, have three main points here. I'll pick on kind of the last two. The first thing is interesting, the cafeteria. We really have pretty limited cafeteria space. It results in those 3 lunch periods with us having kids eat as early as 10:40 a.m. May not seem like a big deal, but if school's starting, you eat at 10:40 and you have an after school activity or something, you can really end up with kind of a long gap between the time you eat lunch and get home or get to a point where you can eat again. The plumbing, heating, and electrical systems have exceeded their service life. It's important to note that's not every piece of the system. Some of the components have been replaced, but it's a lot of the major, I'll say, air handling equipment, so the big blower fans and things that are moving air through the building. Some of them are more than 40 years old and are needed to be replaced. And then Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, didn't even exist when sections of the school were built. And so some locations still, while you're grandfathered in, it's not as though you are in any sort of illegal situation. It's time when we do a major renovation project to look at addressing the ADA so you become compliant. More on the roofing. We noted roofing is critical. About 60% of the school was done previously. Or did I get to my 40%? 40% was done in the last referendum. The remaining 60% is included in this package. So we'd be in a situation where all of our roofs are within, a 5 to 10 year old age window, which is great. Not many school districts can say that. We also have, and mainly the high school wing, I'll call the wing behind me to the south here, really just has some soffits that require a great deal of maintenance, some older windows, doors, and we've got some masonry and brickwork on the elementary school that's deteriorating a little bit. Technology infrastructure, that's probably a pretty good one. Everybody can understand this school generally was built before technology was available. And it was definitely built before every kid probably had a computer in their pocket and carried a computer around at the same time. So looking to just beef up the infrastructure. This is not as though the district is way behind, but it's an example of when we come in and do these projects, reinvesting and getting up to speed with technology is a great way to go. And then as I noted earlier, just a lot of site-based work. So some concrete that's cracking, our asphalt parking lots. This parking lot's a great example if you drive through it. It's to the point where it needs a little bit of attention. Academics, this is obviously an area that's changed a lot over the years. So I think I can say confidently, all of us in this room, we learned 30 desks facing a chalkboard. We sat for 45 minutes and then we moved to the next classroom. It's not really how education is delivered today. It's a lot more collaborative. It's a lot more engaging. It's a lot more project-based. That means there might be 10 or 15 minutes of introduction on a topic and then breaking into small groups or working on projects, and classrooms in our buildings just weren't designed for that. That's not unique to Random Lake at all. Most schools throughout the region had that same challenge. So the project would really address all three of these, and I'll show you on the plan in a second, where we'd be creating some flexible collaborative learning environments. We'd be putting some new furniture in the majority of the classrooms to really allow the best space possible and the best tools possible to allow our educators to do the great work that they're doing. Band and choir needs to be expanded. You've got a great program going, and it's growing in numbers and interest. That's a good thing. The challenge comes, your space is constrained. So what this project would look at providing some enhancements to the band and choir area. Theater always needs more support and storage. That's another thing that's not unique to Random Lake. So we'd be looking at repurposing some existing space to enhance that. Your fitness area and weight room, if you've ever been in it, it's basically an old storage room off the back of the gym. It really is small to support the size groups that you have working in there. And then the locker rooms and support spaces, the location that they are is great. Right next to the gym, easy access to outside, so that doesn't change. But we're looking to remodel those, create better access for students, better access for athletic trainers, educators, and coaches. So the solution will be kind of re-summarizing all of those needs. So if we can go right ahead. So on this plan, I'll start at the bottom of the plan and kind of work my way up. So item 13, as noted, would be a reconfiguration and reconstruction of the main entry, drop-off, and pickup. So changing, obviously replacing the asphalt, but also changing some of the traffic flow. Like we would have a loop here, and then a second loop that would be here. So again, getting some separation of the parents and buses. We may eventually reconfigure. These are all conceptual. It's important to note nothing's been fully designed or engineered. That would happen all after the community approves. So we might reconfigure to get a little bit more of this parking closer to the entrance, because I'm sure these aren't the favorite spots to park in when you've got an event in the middle of winter. So 13 is really looking at reconfiguring drop-off pickup and replacing the asphalt. Number 2 is the biggest move. So that yellow color is the additions to the school. The rest of the building is remaining as is, intact, remodeling in places, but really the addition would be at the front of the school. That addition would include a new kitchen, a new multi-purpose cafeteria, and then number 1 would be the secure entrance. So some new secure entrance here. Number 2 is the new multi-purpose cafeteria, and then this would be the kitchen piece. So that obviously creates kind of a new main entry for the school. As I noted before, that would be the only secure entrance after the school day starts. Also will aid in getting our kitchen out of the middle. Right now our kitchen sits right here. All deliveries, all food are being brought through the school. Not the driver for it, it had some needs as well. So we'd be able to do a direct access for deliveries right into the kitchen. It's centered right across our building, so it really would work well to support all of our students.
Let me give you a break to, and the other piece, as we look at this, we didn't put it in, but one of the things we've been looking at for this referendum is to try to create efficiencies. So Matt said, our middle school eats at 10:40. By having a multi-purpose room that can feed more students at one time, we can actually go down to 2 lunches. So we can have 11 o'clock lunch and 11:45 lunch that make more sense. And the other thing that we're doing is currently we have, and we'll talk a little bit about the libraries. We have 2 libraries. We bring that into 1, and we're actually taking 3 of our current offices, because we man an elementary, a middle, and a high school office along with our district office, bringing those together, that it would be 1 centralized office. So finding ways to be more efficient where we don't have to have people in these different places. By bringing everything to the middle, we actually can cover it with fewer individuals. So trying to find ways to be efficient and going forward with that. So just kind of a piece
That's really important. I always forget the operational piece there.
No.
I'll work across the plan now. So the 2 items noted in 3 here are the current high school wing. So you're all good. So the 2 areas in item 3 would be academic renovation. So as I noted before, we have sufficient classroom capacity and quantity at that end. So it's really improving the organization, configuration of our classrooms. 11 and 12 are our some bathroom renovations and the theater support space renovations in number 12 right here. Number 4 is kind of one of our first big moves where we're going to change the function in its entirety. So as I noted, as Mike noted before, we have 2 libraries currently, right? So we operate the library we sit in is right here in number 4. And number 10 is the elementary middle school library. So what this plan proposes is making the current space we sit in into the weight fitness center. So the size works. If you take the ceiling out, you get the right height. It's available right at the front of school. So if evenings and weekend users want access to it, they've got a simple location to get in and access on both sides. It's a really nice size for a weight fitness center. So that really seemed to make sense as we started reorganizing the plan. Number 10, the other library for the elementary middle school students would become a collaborative STEM, so science, technology, engineering, math space. It's really nicely located in terms of its adjacency to classrooms. And again, it's a really nice size and position to do that. The current cafeteria, since we're building a new cafeteria, would sit here, number 8, would become the library. So it's kind of a little bit of a domino effect of building one thing new and then repurposing the other spaces to address other needs that we have. So we really think the plan flows and is organized quite well. I noted before locker room renovations. Number 6 is showing those renovations. All these number 11s are bathrooms. Anybody that's been in almost all but one set of bathrooms, I think that's been remodeled, they really are aged. They're basically original. So that comes with a lot of challenges, as you can imagine, with plumbing, with ADA access, with ventilation and other things. So all of the areas noted as 11 would be the bathroom renovations. Band and choir renovations noted here with number 5. Number 7 is kind of a slight repurposing of some office space to support what we'll call student services, so guidance counselors and other things. Again, perfectly positioned between our 2 schools. So really a great location for that to occur. The number 9s you see on here are elementary and middle school classroom renovations. So as we noted before, very similar to the high school classrooms needing some improvements, the elementary and middle school are the same thing. So that's a really brief overview. Happy to take questions from you after we're done this evening, but hopefully you see a plan that really does address the 3 key areas of need which we identified. I will say one thing, you don't see any renovation proposed back here. That's because the tech ed, ag, and science were touched heavily in the last referendum, and they really are serving you well. So that's a good thing. It's a great example of the investment made that is continuing to benefit students, and we don't need to reinvest there right now.
And I think another piece that I'm excited about, the plan that Ray came up with is our cafeteria is really used for that hour and a half in the middle of the day and not used. It's not a multi-purpose room. It's sometimes after school. By creating a multi-purpose space, it actually becomes a usable space for not just lunchtime, but it can be used before it, after school, as it seconds for a place for practice and all these other things. So it really allows us to utilize our square footage to the fullest extent.
The other thing I think we should note is there were some questions that were in the community survey. So people were, and we just need to do a better job communicating this. There were some other questions asked in the survey regarding air conditioning, adding a softball field, artificial turf, and an indoor practice facility. They were asked on the survey to get feedback and data from the community. The community was clear that they didn't feel now was the right time to address those. So these are not included in the referendum. So the scope that I just went through, these 4 items are not included in the referendum question. So with that, I'll turn it to back to Mike or Kevin.
Kevin gets the cost.
Okay, excellent.
The money man, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
so no one really likes the position of following Matt with all the cool pictures. But so I get to talk about tax impact. I'm Kevin Mullen from Baird, and I've worked with the district for probably 27, 28 years, all the way back to Maggie Gagno as the business manager. But the reason I bring that up is that there's been a lot of thoughtful planning as the district has considered their capital needs throughout that period of time. So back in 2014, when the referendum was approved and the money was borrowed, there was a recognition, as was indicated in Matt's presentation, that not all of the capital projects that were available or needed to be addressed were addressed. Not necessarily because they needed to be left on the cutting room floor, but the time wasn't absolutely perfect for them to be addressed. Whether the roof still had some years on it or whatever that need was. But recognizing that, when the money was borrowed at that point in time, there was room left in the borrowing structure to consider borrowing at a future point in time. So the debt payments did drop in recognition of the reality that future needs were going to have to be addressed. And so this is where we're at right now. One of the nice things that has occurred in the recent history of the school district is that as funding has been available for increased aid to the school district, the revenue limit, as was alluded to earlier, meant that the local levy was not needed for all of the debt service pieces. So there was room to continue to add to prepaying debt service and keeping the tax rate flat. So the school district has maintained a steady tax rate and has been able to prepay some of its debt service in anticipation of this need. So that's why we're here right now. And I guess that makes the cost conversation a little easier for me to explain. The debt service is coming down, and it allows us to feather in this $29.9 million borrowing without any impact on the tax rate, which I think is a pretty good plan. So some of the estimates that went into that tax impact, we maintained a conservative estimate for state aid. So the state aid that was received last year is what we projected. We're actually in a better, slightly better aid position than we were last year. We know that as of last Friday. We estimated two borrowings, one that would occur this year and one that would occur next year, to spread that impact out a little bit. Those were estimated at interest rates at 4.75 and 5%. At the time that we made those estimates, I think, Mike and some of the administrative team were like, whoa, that seems like it's a little bit heavy-handed in terms of being conservative with the interest rates. I'm glad that we were, because those are still acceptable interest rates given the current interest rate environment. We'd still be able to finance at those rates, so that's very good news. And then the last was that we assumed that there would be 7% growth in the equalized value or the tax base in the community in the first year, and then 2% thereafter. We actually had slightly more than 7% growth in value in the community this year. And then moving forward, we're assuming 2%. Again, we feel that's conservative. The reason that I bring that up is that I want you to at least be confident to know that the estimates that went into that projection are conservative, and we feel very confident we can deliver on that. So there is an expectation that tax rates will continue to be maintained at the current level. And in fact, the school board is, currently considering their budget, but based on, those projections, we know that that's a deliverable going into this current budget. So I guess that is the overview of the tax impact. It's hard to talk about it when there really is not any impact. But graphically, this is what it looks like. So going back to 2019-20, this black line is the operational portion of the school district budget that local taxpayers are responsible for. And this blue portion is the portion of the debt service payments that the school district is responsible for. And you can see, heading into 2021-22, that the school district has been able to allocate more to debt service to prepay debt and maintain that tax rate at $9.24. If the referendum is approved, and this is where the dashed line is moving into this next budget, we have room where this light blue column is moving forward to add debt service without increasing the tax rate. And we feel very confident about that. One thing I do want to point out, because again, it speaks to the prudence of the school district and the board in past decisions, you'll notice 2 or 3 blue islands out here of existing debt service, and like debt service is paid off, then there's no payments here, and then 3 payments out here at the end. In the last borrowing, the school district applied for and received 0% interest on a portion of their borrowing. You may recall that QZAB loan that was done, if you were close to the conversation. So these payments have no interest associated with them. So there's really no benefit to prepaying them because there wouldn't be any interest savings. And so those remain, and we structured the debt to wrap around that. So, again, I think it just speaks to the foresight that the school district had in previous decisions that have set them up for this opportunity right now.
Okay, so then the question really, if you go to the next slide, is now I guess if you're doing your early voting or when November 8th will be for $29.9 million. And that's the question, that's the information, that's what we're trying to get out so you can make a informed decision on that question when you go to the ballot box.
The only thing I would point out is the words not to exceed are pretty important. there's a perception that every public project goes over budget and behind schedule. The school district cannot borrow more than $29.9 million if the community approves this. So all this language is technical legalese, what's called the purpose language. It describes what the district can do if the community approves the borrowing of the dollars. They couldn't, for example, go out and build a swimming pool. This is what they're bound to do with the dollars. So it's important to know.
Or sort of feel that there's excess
Yep.
funding.
Great point.
You know, so,
Yep.
you know, those bullet points that were identified as exclusions, if there's savings in the project or interest income that you can use out of the project, that can't be applied for something that's not on that list described.
Oh, no, that's perfect. Did you ever confirm whether this will appear in the back of the ballot or the front?
We have not seen it yet, so that is something to do.
You may want to check when you get your ballots, especially these Novembers with a lot of elections. They'll often put the referendum questions on the back of the ballot. So just make sure you look there if you want to participate. Okay. So if you want more information, we have our website has all this information up. We are doing another open house next week, Monday, after our annual meeting. But really right now, I think is, what do you have for questions? What did we miss? What are the gaps in this presentation? No. Yep.
You have that here? Actually, why don't you pull it up? We do have something we're actually talking about at the board meeting tonight. So our enrollments, over the last 5 years, we've decreased by 10%. And what we've seen over the last 6 years are graduating classes of 60s and 70s, even in the mid 70s, and replacing them over the last 6 or 7 years with classes around 40s and 50s. So what we are doing, our senior class will be our last, unfortunately, our last class of graduates of 70. We'll have probably right around 69 or 72 graduates. And from here, we'll be very consistent for the next decade, because we can see the students we're bringing in and the students that are here. So when this is all said, and you can kind of see right here the numbers, you blow it up a little bit. You can see as a district in 2010, we had a head count of 980, and slowly we are down for this next year, or for this year right here, at 747. Now, these are all kinds of numbers. The actual number of butts and seats, and the number of kids that we're accounting for is the 726, and our enrollment is 687 if we count, because there's special ways we count fourth years. So from that, after this year, we'll probably be settled somewhere in that 660 students per year for the foreseeable future.
That the vast majority of school districts in the state of Wisconsin are declining. There's very few. I would estimate that 80% or more of the school districts in the state are declining. It's just birth rates, and it's the new world. So this is nothing atypical, nothing Random Lake is doing wrong that we're losing students. You're doing the same and facing the same challenge that almost every school district is facing.
But no, great question.
If it were to pass, when would construction start? What impact would there be on students learning?
Great question. So the overall project, if passed, would take somewhere between 30 and 36 months to complete. So the first year roughly would be all the detailed design and engineering. So as I said before, this is a conceptual plan and budget. We haven't met with every staff member. We haven't detailed out, the engineers haven't designed their systems yet. So that would all happen over the first year. Likely construction would start on the addition first, so that we are able to accomplish that while school's going on. So begin building the addition up front as school's still going on, somewhere in the late 2020, I gotta get my referendum cycles right, late 2024 school year. And then we would have to phase the rest of the construction. So there'll be a period of time likely where we'll be taking 4 to 6 classrooms at a time, depending on exactly what we can work out. And we'll be slowly, during the school year, going kind of section by section. Kids will always be separated from that construction with temporary walls and partitions. Anything happening outside will be secured with fencing. So it will be a kind of a lengthier process, but it will involve a series of phases, with obviously some pretty intense summers, where we can get those, roughly 3 months, to get access to larger phases. Great question.
If construction costs or inflation rates were to continue to increase, would something be eliminated to offset that, or how?
So this budget was built based on projects that we were bidding during some of the highest peaks of increases. So we've accommodated, hopefully, no crystal ball, but hopefully some of the largest percentage increases have already been incorporated in. And the budget has a 7.5% inflationary factor to accommodate another year's worth likely of inflation before we go to bid. We are seeing some softening there. Some of the lead times are starting to become more reasonable, but it's hard to say I don't envision them dropping prices. We're optimistic that hopefully some of those major increases we saw in steel, roof insulation, precast concrete, et cetera, some of those are starting to stabilize and at least get closer to a more traditional inflationary rate.
And last one, the air conditioning said there wouldn't be an increase in air conditioning. What percentage of the school has, or what part has air conditioning now? And
I would say it's probably less than 10%. Offices, library, auditorium, gym, are the places that have these.
and then the new multi-purpose room would not have,
It
or
would.
that would?
Yeah, that question specific to the survey was, we've got a series of units that have their own individual, or called EX cooling or air conditioning right on them. So if there's a unit on this row, it has air conditioning on it, but that doesn't have enough capacity to do the entire school. So this move would have been getting to what we call a central chiller, so a big air conditioner, that would then have been piped and plumbed to the entire school, to allow it to do that. So we can easily continue to grab small pieces with those rooftop units. That's what we would likely be doing, with the addition, and maybe a couple other key areas, but we do not have the budget to do the entire school. Great question.
Questions?
I have a question on what would this area right now, what would that be under the new program?
Great question. Yeah, this would become the weight fitness center. Okay. So the small weight fitness center at the back of the gym can always use more gym storage and athletic storage, so that space would be just left as it is, but use this storage, and this would become our weight fitness center. Adding a small bathroom and shower for community members or others that may want to use it. There'll be an entrance, obviously both sides will basically be flanked by an entrance. It can be secured from the rest of the school for morning, evening, weekend use, if that's a desire.
Last one I have, I guess, is so that the new, when it's all said and done, you said one main entrance that'll be accessible during the day. That would mean that the ability to lock everything else down, everything else is up to date, modernized as far as locks, security doors.
Yep, and we would be putting what are called door position switches, it's basically a little signalization on an outside door. So let's just say the high school kids, which they'll still have access in the mornings, will kind of come in. I want to make sure I get my position correct here. Basically, we'll come in the entrance next to us if they're parking here. That'll be supervised generally by the person, right, the way you do it now. Right. But as soon as the school day starts, all doors are closed, all doors are locked. And if somebody would leave a door ajar, a typical example would be by it, right? They're outside doing something normal in good weather. They historically have propped the door open. They'd get a text on their phone telling them, or a phone call would tell them which door is propped open. So somebody could immediately go and close that door. It's also great at night, right? You can just secure the entire building by checking on your app, and they'll tell you that all of the doors are in the closed position. There's a lot of other security things that we'll talk about. We're just not really advertising them. It does beat the purpose a bit to talk openly about all the security things. We will have a closed session of the board to really go deep on those, if the community approves of the project. Very good questions tonight.
Very good. Any other questions?
You think there'd be more, like, I graduated here in 1961, so I know there's a lot of doors around the outside of the building. Would some of those be closed up, or would be more doors or less doors?
So likely about the same amount of doors. So generally, the quantity of doors is driven by the building code and the requirement for exits. And they measure them by the inch, believe it or not. And so could we lose a door or two here or there? Maybe. We'd have to do a full code analysis to determine that. But generally, we will be keeping the doors where they are because they're required for exiting. And then we'll just be monitoring them.
There's no other questions, you can ask. We also have a tour available. I think there's some spots that if you're interested in the high school, in the middle school and the elementary, that Mrs. Moulton can walk around and you can ask some questions there and just see, what does it look like in the original part of the high school. You got to see some pictures of some things in here. You can actually see them in real life. It's another place where you can ask questions. But before we let that group go, any other questions?
Required bathrooms, you'd be redoing those in the whole school, middle school, grade school.
Yeah, so I think there's one set of bathrooms that isn't included in that because they've been done a little more recently, but for the most part, every other one will be done. We're also gonna be putting in what we call family bathrooms, so there's just a lot more families that have either young kids or older family members who might need a little bit of assistance. We're gonna be peppering those throughout the school as well, mainly in the public area, so that there is access to those for families with young kids or older families.
Building will be extended further into the parking lot now?
It will, yes. Yep, and the parking will be offset when we reconfigure the whole lot. We're gonna be able to offset the parking we lose with some additional. And hopefully it's a little more convenient parking in the building versus having some of our stalls so far out that they're not great for events.
Okay, and, reserve the right, I'm always available, phone call, email, after this, tour, if you decide to go on. If you have some other questions, please reach out. We want to make sure that we're as open and transparent. We're doing a bunch of these meetings, and at different community events. So we want to make sure we get your input. If you have concerns, we want to hear the concerns so we can talk about them. But please also share this. We have another open house next week, Monday. So if you heard something here and you have a friend that didn't come, please have them come to our annual meeting and we'll do another tour next week. With that, Sandy? Thank you all, guys. Yes, thank you all for coming tonight. It's a little chilly outside, almost feels like winter already, but you have braved it to come in, so thank you very much.